Hi, how are you? How have you been lately? My name is Nyquis, and this is Fish&Birds. If you are new here, welcome, and if you're a returning viewer, welcome back. I'm glad to have you here again. Today, what I'll be discussing is a little bit about my story. And so, at one moment, while I was, saying my prayers and my requirements for who I would ask for help from, the color purple came up because the color purple is my favorite color. And I said, it has to be someone wearing purple. And then I'll know that the person that he has for me is that person if they have purple on them. I let go of that idea right after I thought of it because I was like, no, that's too much. Or it was too complicated. I felt like that was too complicated. And after I said my prayer and I had let go of my biases, I decided I was going to rest my eyes because I just needed to do that. And so I was like, it's in the hands of God now. And that was it. So I closed my eyes for not even a few seconds, but just a few seconds. And I felt this cool breeze blowing through the station where I was sitting at. Mind you, it was not cold in there at all. I specifically noted how it was warm where I was sitting at. And I was thankful for that because the nights before, I had to go through those nights and it was really cold. But inside the station where I was sitting, it was warm. And so when that cool breeze blew through the station where I was sitting, I knew that that wind had come from God. And as soon as it did, I opened my eyes and I looked. I saw two women walking in my direction, heading towards the escalators. One woman, I believe she was an Asian woman, and another woman, it was a white woman who was wearing glasses. I looked at the young woman, the Asian woman who was walking, and I was like, no. And then I looked at the white lady with the glasses. She was an older white lady. And when I looked at her, I saw on her chest a purple ribbon. And the purple ribbon was significant because it represents domestic violence. When I came to LA, when I was at the Pacific Clinic's Hope Drop-In Center, I learned that October is Domestic Violence Awareness Month, and the Youth Peace Walk event that we went to was about domestic violence. And so at the event that I went to, I received my own purple ribbon for domestic violence, and I pinned it to my bag. I had two pins. I had one which was an actual ribbon, and I can actually show you the ribbon for proof. I received this October 26th, Saturday, 2024, the day that I went to the Youth Peace Walk in San Gabriel. And on October 28th, Monday, 2024, the woman that I saw was wearing the exact same kind of ribbon on her shirt. And so I knew in that moment that she was the one I needed to ask help from, that the Lord had sent her to me. I had to hurry up and get to her though because she was walking pretty quickly, getting to escalators. And so I hurried up and grabbed my bags and I ran over to her, and she had her earbuds in, and so I was calling out to her and I was saying, excuse me, but she couldn't hear me. And so I had tapped her on her shoulder and I said, excuse me, could you help me? So when we got to the bottom of the escalators, I introduced myself to her and I told her that I saw her ribbon, and I know that it's from domestic violence. It was, representing domestic violence awareness. And I told her I also have, one of these ribbons, and that I myself have experienced domestic violence and I was currently fleeing domestic violence, which is the truth. Unfortunately, what I experienced in my household was domestic abuse. Not only was I, a witness to the abuse and experiencing it, I also was a perpetrator because these are things that I had learned growing up, and I started to exhibit and, abusive behaviors myself while I was in my household. And that's what I had learned. And so that was an opportunity the Lord gave me to, speak with someone about what I experienced. And thankfully, I learned from her that she had received her ribbon because she was a DV counselor. She was a domestic violence and alcohol and substance abuse counselor. And so she received her ribbon. She had received an award for the work that she had been doing in domestic violence counseling and substance abuse counseling. And so I told her, I asked her if she could help me, if she knew anyone who would be willing to let me stay with them until, I was able to get the help that I needed, the homeless resources that I needed. And she told me that I could actually stay with her. She said she would have to, talk to her kids first and let them know. And she said it was okay, I could stay with her. And I was so thankful. I was so thankful. And so she called her daughter. And when she called her daughter, she told me her daughter's name. And that was additional confirmation that this woman that I had met was the woman that the Lord had for me to stay with while I was still, experiencing homelessness for a time. Because her daughter has the same name as me. Her daughter's first name is my middle name. Her daughter's first name is my middle name. And the woman that I spoke with, her first name is actually the same name as my grandmother and my aunt. So the names were important to me. She had the same name as my grandmother and my aunt, and her daughter had the same name as me. So that was just additional confirmation that she was the woman I was meant to stay with. And I was thankful for this experience again, because the Lord helped me to know that I was going to have to be the one to make the effort to ask for help. That He would send the person for me to speak with, but I would have to do my part and ask for the help that I needed. And so I got to do that, and the woman told me that I could stay with her. And so I went with her to her home, and this was in central LA, Crenshaw, around that area. And she let me stay with her from the evening, October 28th, 2024, until January 11th, 2025. So I had been with them for about 2.5 months. And during that time, she was helping me out, trying to find resources. But ultimately, I just used that time to rest and to get closer to God. I was struggling a lot, but He helped me to continue in my faith until finally it was time for me to go. And a couple of days before I left, before I was told to leave, I actually I went to Santa Monica a couple times. The first time I went to Santa Monica was so that I could go to church. And that was on December 29th, 2024. And I enjoyed my time at church there. And I decided that I was interested in going back to the church the next week. The second time I went to Santa Monica, instead of going to church, I went to the Santa Monica Pier. And I stayed at the beach and spent time with the Lord there. And then I had to use the restroom again. So I went to the church and I asked the people who were still at the church if I could use the restroom. And they let me use the restroom. And I introduced myself to the person who let me in. And I found out that her name was Hope. And I knew that the Lord had blessed me to learn about the church and to, go to Santa Monica that day simply because of the girl named Hope who let me use the restroom at the church. And so that was a blessing. That was a good experience for me. I went back to the lady's house who had let me stay with her. And then I believe a couple days later, on Tuesday, I went back to Santa Monica. And this was when the fires had started. I went to church that day, and I decided to go to the church again on Tuesday so that I could spend some time there to pray, because I was struggling a bit and I wanted to see what the Lord had for me, whether or not Santa Monica would be the next place that I would go to. So I went to church that day and I spoke with a woman there, and she asked me where I came from. And she asked me if I came from the Palisades, and I told her no, I came from Crenshaw. And then she asked me again, and she was like, did you come from the Palisades? And I was like, no, I was in Crenshaw. I don't even know what the Palisades is, because I didn't know anything about the Palisades until that day. And while I was at the church, I kept getting alerts on my phone. And I was like, what the heck is this about? I didn't check the alerts because I just wasn't interested. I was trying to, focus on praying. And she told me, she was still sitting with me. We were talking. And she told me that's what the alerts were about. There were fires in the Palisades. I was like, oh, okay. And mind you, when I went to Santa Monica that day, I had got off the train and I saw smoke in the sky. And I was like, what the heck? Is there a fire or something? And I knew there was a fire, but I didn't know like the details of the situation. I didn't ask about it. But I found out the truth of what was going on when I got to the church. And so while I was there, they let me connect to their Wi-Fi. And I looked up, the Palisades, and I found out about the fire. And then I saw that there was the Palisades Park, which is right next to Santa Monica Pier. And I was like, okay, I think the Lord is leading me to go there. And I knew he was leading me to go there because the woman was so adamant, was just telling me about the Palisades. And then another guy came in and he had made mention that he just came from the Palisades. I was like, okay, I must be needing to go that way. And so I didn't go actually to the city. I just went to the park. And while I was at the park, I walked for a bit and I took a seat on one of the benches and I got to see the smoke in the sky. And I was like, oh wow, there's really a fire happening right now in the Palisades. Okay, so that happened. I spent some time there with the Lord until, just before sunset, and then I went back to Crenshaw, to the place where I was staying. And that same night, I believe it was that night, the woman's daughter had came to me and she told me that I was going to have to leave soon because their landlord had found out that I was staying there and I would have to leave the end of that week. And I know that the Lord blessed me to go through everything that I went through prior, visiting that church, going to the Santa Monica Pier, going to the Palisades Park, because I was going to have to leave soon. And He blessed me to receive all the good things that I did in that day. And that evening, I think that was the 7th, Tuesday, January 7th, 2025. I was told that I would have to leave where I was staying by the end of the week. Saturday, January 11th, 2025. And I was a little bit afraid. I was a little bit crushed. I really was, because I wasn't prepared fully to leave. But honestly, I knew that because the Lord blessed me to hear that I would have to leave, that He had prepared me to leave. Like, it was time for me to go, and I just had to trust that He had somewhere for me to go next. I was struggling a bit, though, that night. And the day after, Wednesday, I just spent that day just resting. I was trying not to let what I had heard go to my head. I was trying not to be overcome with fear, and so I just spent that time, resting, letting the Holy Spirit help me, reflecting on the time that I had spent there, trying to hold on to my faith, and just trust that the Lord will have somewhere for me to go next. And I talked with Him in my heart, though, because I was struggling with the news about me having to leave, not because I had to leave, but because of how I was told about the situation and how I would leave. I really wanted the woman who let me stay with her to be the one to tell me that I would have to leave, rather than having her daughter tell me, because we had a few experiences beforehand where she had sent her daughter to tell me about things rather than speaking to me herself, or if she and her children were leaving, Rather than telling me that they were leaving, they would just go. And I learned after that that they were trying to communicate with me. I had, given them my phone number, with the government phone, but apparently I had turned off the notifications, or I didn't know that the notifications were off, so I wasn't able to see that they had actually made sure to contact me and let them know that they were leaving beforehand. And so, yeah, so that was a personal, issue on my end. I just really wanted to hear from the woman herself that I was going to have to leave. And so the only person who knew that was God. I didn't say anything to them. I just kept it in my heart, and I told the Lord, like, I know that I'm going to have to leave here for certain when you have her come talk to me herself about the situation. And so that same night, the Lord gave me a dream, and he showed me that the woman and her boyfriend would talk to me about me having to leave. And I asked them about laundry in the dream, and unfortunately I wasn't able to do laundry. And so that next morning, I after that dream, I knew I was going to have to leave. And so I had some of the resources that I had received from when I went to the homeless access centers in El Monte and Pasadena, and I decided to look through them and see what my options were, what I could do. And while I was sitting on the couch looking through the papers that I had, the woman and her boyfriend came in, and they spoke with me, and they saw that I was looking through the resources, and they talked to me about how I definitely was going to have to leave. So this was my dream come true. What the Lord had shown me actually came to pass. He blessed me with that, what I needed to be sure that I would have to leave. And the woman and her boyfriend were really kind. They told me that they were trying to look into resources for me, but they just couldn't find anything. And I was like, okay, that's all right. I asked them if they could help me do laundry one more time before I had to go. But unfortunately, I didn't have that opportunity. They didn't have the money to help me in that moment. And I was like, okay, they told me that they were planning on doing laundry that weekend. And so I was like, okay, I'll just wait until the weekend and see that day that I would have to leave if I could do laundry before. So after I had the conversation with the woman and her boyfriend, I was trying to figure out what I was going to do. I was praying to the Lord, asking him to lead me in what I should do. And I was inspired to go back to Santa Monica to see if I could ask anyone in the church if they could help me out. And so I went to Santa Monica, back to the church, and unfortunately, no one was at the church. It was closed. They had closed the church for safety reasons, which is understandable. There were fires going on in that area, close by, and so no one was there that day. And I believe this was a Thursday, yes. The 9th, yeah. Thursday, January 9th, 2025. That is when I went back to Santa Monica to the church that I had visited beforehand. And I knew that the Lord was leading me to go back to Santa Monica because he blessed me to watch some prophetic words and reminded me of some scriptures. And he blessed me to be strong and very courageous and know that that was the day I could go back to Santa Monica and see if I could receive help. So yeah, no one was there at the church, but there was a woman who was sitting on the porch outside the church with her dog, and she was on the phone. And so I just, made note of her, and she was wearing purple leggings. And I was sitting out there. I decided to sit close to the church, really on the wall of the church, so I could connect to the Wi-Fi again, so that I could look up stuff that I needed online, try to figure out how I could get in touch with the people who worked at the church again. But I wasn't able to do that. So I just was trying to figure out, maybe I should ask this woman for help that was sitting out on the porch. But she was still on the phone, so I just waited for her to finish talking. And then once she was done talking, I asked her if she was a member of the church, and she said that she wasn't. And she asked me, what I was looking for. And I told her, I came to the church today to ask anyone if they could help me out with homeless resources. And she gave me the directions to City Hall, and then she told me that she knew about a homeless access center, but she didn't remember the name, and she didn't fully remember the details regarding its location. So she tried to give me the directions for the homeless access center that she knew about, but she didn't fully know exactly where it was. She didn't remember entirely. So I just decided to listen to her when she said to go to City Hall. Before I left to go to City Hall, I asked her about her name. I overheard her. She was talking to her dog, and her dog's name was Violet, I believe. I think her dog's name was Violet. And then I asked her about her name, and her name was Hannah. And that was another confirmation to me. Her name and her dog's name, and the fact that she was wearing purple pants, let me know that I did the right thing asking her for help. I decided to listen to her about going to the City Hall. But just as I was heading off to go to City Hall, this guy that I had seen before at the church had approached me, and he spoke with me. We had both taken the train to get to Santa Monica to get to the church, and he asked me, while I was there. I asked him if he was a member of the church, and he said that he wasn't, but he just visited the church. That's where he intended to, go for prayer. And I told him, that's exactly why I had come to the church too. And so I knew that the church was closed, but I decided to, he showed me to where the prayer room was, and I wanted to make sure I went that way just in case it was actually open after all. If it was just the office that was closed, but they made sure to leave the church open for the prayer room. But when we went to look for the prayer room, it was closed after all. The prayer room was closed. But I saw a scripture about Mary saying how, I'll put the scripture in, but it was the one that says how, blessed is she who believes, for there will be a performance of the things that were told her. And I knew that was added confirmation that I was, doing the right thing. And so the prayer room was closed, the church was closed altogether. And so I just decided to take Hannah's directions and go to City Hall. And so I did that. I went to City Hall, asked them if they had any information about homeless resources, and they gave me, the woman who was working at the reception desk gave me, she gave me a card with the names and locations and contact information for the nearby homeless centers. And then I also took a booklet. What I had grabbed from the City Hall was this booklet here. It says homelessness. And I was given this card here that, shows the homeless services that they have in the county, Los Angeles County. I read through the card that I got for the homeless service resources, and I saw the people concerned. And that was actually the location that Hannah was recommending to me to go to. And so I decided I would go there. I had some issues with, getting there in regards to the directions. I was able to connect to the Wi-Fi while I was at the City Hall and look up the people concerned, but I ended up not fully paying attention to the directions. And so I went the wrong way a couple times. But then I met this Australian family who was visiting, and I asked them for help if they could look up the directions for me. And I was given the correct directions, and I followed the directions that they gave me, and I finally got to the people concerned. While I was there, I asked for help again. They let me know once more about shelters, and I just knew that this wasn't going to work. But I stayed at the center, the people concerned, and they blessed me to get some food. I used the restroom again. I connected to the Wi-Fi to look up stuff, what I could do. I really didn't look up anything, actually. I just watched a couple prophetic words because I needed some encouragement about the situation. And then finally, I was inspired to go back to Santa Monica Pier, back to the Palisades Park. And I decided to do that, to go there and just watch the sunset. And so I went there, back to the bench that I had gone to on the 7th, just a couple days before. And when I went to the bench, there were other people at the area that I went to, and I saw this woman, and she was wearing a green sweater, and I decided to sit down next to her. At first I wasn't going to, because like I said before, I'm a bit of an introvert, and there was another bench. There were two benches right there, but the bench that she sat on was the bench that I had sat on when I had first went to the Palisades Park, and I was like, you know what, I'm just going to sit on the bench next to her because that's the one that I wanted to sit on. And so while I was there, I was going through it, having some internal, turmoil about the situation. I was hoping for a blessing, and thankfully that is exactly what I got. I overheard the woman. She was on the phone. She was there with her daughter, and she was talking to the person she was on the phone with, saying that she had brought her daughter to the Palisades Park to see the fire so that she could count her blessings and remember to pray for other people and not just for herself. She was saying how, her daughter's school had closed because of the fires, and so she just decided to bring her there to see what was going on. And I knew the moment that she had made mention of the Lord and counting blessings that I, once again, was heeding the Spirit of the Lord, His guidance to go where I had went to. And so she was on the phone, and I thought to myself, I should ask her for help. I trusted that I could ask her for help because she knows God and she spoke of the Lord. And so I had to wait until she was done talking. But while she was still talking, I had cried. I cried because I knew the Lord had heard me. He heard my prayers, the prayers in my heart, and He blessed me to be there. And the woman, that was extra confirmation. The extra confirmation was that when I was crying, in the middle of her conversation on the phone, she had asked me if I was okay, and she rubbed my back. And I told her that I was okay, and she said okay, and she continued her conversation. And then when she finished talking on the phone, I asked her if she could help me. I told her how I overheard her talking about the Lord and counting blessings, and I told her how I was experiencing homelessness and I was in need of help, with resources, because I was going to have to leave where I was in a couple days, and I had nowhere else to go. And so, when she was on the phone, she was talking about how, she works for schools and how they were using the schools, for as, emergency shelters for people who had been experiencing, the schools were being used as emergency shelters for those who had struggled and were evacuating from the fires and who, their homes had burned down and whatnot. And so that's how I knew I could ask her also for help, about my situation. She gave me her phone number and told me to call her and that she would talk with me the next day. And I could meet with her at a church because there was a church near to where I was staying at, and she would help me with the resources that I need. And so I was confident in that because of the help that I received in that moment. I took her phone number, and then I, sent her a text message, giving her my name, and so that she could have my phone number as well. And I went back to the woman's house, the woman that I had been staying with, and I just rested that night. I had hope again for the next day, that the Lord would help me with what I needed. And the morning came, I was able to shower because I still had, I was able to wash out my underwear by hand, and I decided to just re-wear the clothes that I had on because, they weren't dirty, they didn't smell bad, so I just re-wore those. So I was able to take a shower that day. And I was waiting for the woman to reach out to me again. And I think I reached out to her to ask for help, but the woman hadn't contacted me again until later on that night. And so she replied with, the phone number for this this other access center that's in Inglewood. And, she said to call the people that she had, shared with me, and that she let me know that they would help me out with what I needed. All right, so that was all for today. I will see you guys in my next video. Until then, fly high and keep on swimming. Peace.